All right, let's talk about an athlete who, at the turn of the 20th century, was a true global superstar. I mean, this guy broke world records, drew massive crowds, and completely defied a system that was built to hold him down. And yet, there's a pretty good chance you've never even heard his name.
You heard that right. It wasn't a baseball player, it wasn't a boxer. In the year 1900, at the absolute height of the Jim Crow era, the most popular, highest-paid athlete on the entire planet was a black cyclist from Indianapolis.
And his name was Marshall Major Taylor. This man achieved a level of fame that honestly transcended race. He became an idol in America, in Europe, and even in Australia, all while facing the most unimaginable hatred you can think of.
And this quote, man, it just tells you everything you need to know about who he was. Despite all the abuse, he carried himself with his dignity and grace that was, every bit as powerful as his incredible speed on the track.
So you've got to be asking, how does a black kid from Indiana, born just after the Civil War, become a world-beating cyclist? Well, his story kicks off with a really unusual childhood.
So, Taylor's dad was a coachman for a wealthy white family, and for a few years, young Marshall actually lived with them. He got a private education and his very first bicycle. A little while later, his crazy trick-riding skills got him a job doing stunts outside a bike shop. And because he wore a soldier's uniform for the act, people started calling him Major. And that name, it stuck with him for life.
It really didn't take long for Taylor to go from just performing stunts to absolutely blowing past the competition on the racetrack. There's a reason they called him the Black Cyclone.
So in 1896, he's just 18 years old and he turns professional. He moves to Worcester, Massachusetts, which was basically the Silicon Valley for the booming bicycle industry back then. And this is where he goes from being a local phenom to a legit world-class athlete.
What's this number? 1 minute and 41 seconds. That was his world record for the 1-mile sprint from a standing start. A time so ridiculously fast that the record stood for 28 years. I mean, think about that. He was in a league of his own, no question about it.
But here's the absolute gut punch. Even as he's out there setting world records, the racism was so bad that he was literally barred from competing on the very tracks where he first learned to race. His success didn't protect him, it just made him a bigger target.
But despite all the bans and the threats, Taylor's talent was just undeniable. You couldn't hold him back. And in 1899, he reached the absolute top of his sport.
This was a massive, massive deal. By winning the 1-mile sprint world championship, he became only the second black athlete in any sport to win a world title. He had conquered the entire cycling world.
And with that fame came a whole lot of money. To put it in perspective for you, his earnings in 1 year were almost 5 times what one of the biggest baseball stars of the era, Honus Wagner, was making. Major Taylor wasn't just a champion, he was one of the highest-paid athletes on earth.
But for every single victory on the track, there was a whole other battle happening off of it. Taylor himself called the racism he faced that dreadful monster prejudice, and it often showed up as organized, really dangerous tactics from his white competitors.
See, his rivals knew they couldn't beat his explosive speed in a fair race. They just couldn't. So they conspired to take away his greatest weapon, using a dirty trick called pocketing. Okay, so picture this. It was a coordinated 4-man move. They would literally build a wall of riders around him, one in front, one on his right, one on his back wheel. He was trapped. It completely neutralized his famous sprint and let one of their own guys just ride to an easy victory. This wasn't just bad sportsmanship, it was a conspiracy to make him lose, over and over again. And things got way uglier than just what happened on the track. He got constant threats. People threw nails in front of his tires. After one race, another rider actually choked him until he passed out. That monster wasn't just trying to beat him. It was trying to break him for good. So how did he fight back against all this? Well, not with his fists, but with his character. Taylor lived by this really strict code of clean living. He was a devout Baptist who famously refused to race on Sundays, even when it meant losing out on huge paydays. He truly believed his conduct off the track was just as important as his performance on it. After a grueling career fighting battles on 2 fronts, Taylor finally retired in 1910. He was only 32. But the last chapter of his life is just a heartbreaking story of how quickly a hero can be forgotten. It turns out, the same laser focus that made him a champion on the bike, it just didn't translate to the business world. He made some bad investments, lost everything in the stock market crash,
and eventually became estranged from his own family. And this is just devastating. The world's first black sports superstar, a man who had been one of the most famous people on the planet, died totally alone and broke in a Chicago hospital's charity ward. He was buried in an unmarked grave, his incredible legacy just seemingly erased. But his story doesn't end there, thankfully. 16 years after he died, in 1948, a group of his old cycling rivals, with money from Frank Schwinn, yes, of the Schwinn Bicycle Company, they all came together. They had his body exhumed and reburied in a proper grave, making sure his memory would finally get the honor it deserved.
And the inscription they put on his new headstone, it just perfectly captures the man he was. Came up the hard way without hatred in his heart, a credit to his race who always gave out his best. And finally, gone but not forgotten.
Major Taylor's story is just this powerful reminder of an incredible life that was almost completely lost to time. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Whose stories have we not yet rediscovered?